Hi Denise, more essays from you. Great work. Let's take a look and see what you did. An increasing number of people are suffering from health problems as a result of eating too much fast food. It is therefore necessary for governments to impose a higher tax on this kind of food. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Okay, so this is a tricky one. On the surface, it looks pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But if you're aiming for a really high score, and when I say really high, I mean like an 8 or, possibly even higher, then one of the things you have to look at in this essay is this word. It is necessary for governments to impose a higher tax. So in other words, they're not asking if it's a good idea, if they should, but if it's necessary, okay? So that's something to think about. It's the key word here, because if you think about that, like, for example, well, it's a good idea, but not necessarily necessary, then that will change the way you approach this topic, okay? So always keep an eye out for those words that kind of imply some sort of an extreme, all right? Words like necessary, required, or, they must do this. Because a lot of times, you might answer the question then, well, sure, it's a good idea, but saying that it's necessary is going a little too far, okay? So let's see how you approach this. Experts throughout both the developing and developed world have debated whether, careful here with your spelling, this is a wrong spelling of whether, governments must increase the fast food taxes due to the rise of people having health problems. Get rid of this on score. This essay will discuss both sides. Which both sides? Both sides of what? Using examples from the Australian government and Harvard University to demonstrate points and prove arguments. Now look at the problem here. You mentioned both sides, but you didn't tell me what both sides of the argument are. So I only know what one of the sides of the argument, whether they should do it, but I don't know what the alternative option is, that they shouldn't do it. Should I assume that? Maybe, but let's see. There is ample evidence that fast food occasion health issues. No. You mean a different word here. I think you mean causes. There is ample evidence that fast food causes health issues in many people. The central reason behind this is twofold. Firstly, people's choice to buy, I would have preferred a colon here or a semicolon. Firstly, comma, people's choice to buy fast food is due to lower prices available in most supermarkets. Secondly, youngsters are learning eating habits following their parents' preference for unhealthy alimentation. All right, it's a little unnatural to use this word. I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to show a range of vocabulary, and that's fine, but this is probably not the best choice in this particular context. For example, recent empirical research by the Australian government demonstrated that increased taxes on cigarettes has decreased by 75% smoking, know that, in people among all different age groups. Therefore, it is conclusively clear that if Australian governments impose taxes on unhealthy food, it would decrease, not decline, society's demand, know the, and then apostrophe S in this category. Okay, I'm not really thrilled with the way you developed this paragraph. The better part of it just talks about the damage that fast food causes, and then this example talks about smoking, which is completely irrelevant to the previous sentence. And then you do this, it is conclusively clear, etc., etc. Well, not really. So it just feels like there's no real connection between these ideas and these sentences. There are other ways to do this paragraph. Remember that if you are agreeing that it's a good thing to do, then you should start with some sort of rephrasing of this, that there are many benefits to imposing a tax on fast food. And then you could say what one of those benefits is. One of the benefits is that people would eat less of it, which would reduce Obesity and obesity-related health issues. This has been proven by similar such measures with smoking, and then you can talk about this. Okay. You could also say that another benefit would be that if people continue to eat health food, at least the government will have additional money through tax in order um, to help the health issues of these people, to cover things like insurance and medical bills for these people. So if people choose to do things that are damaging, at least a further tax would offset the cost of medical care for the government. Okay, so that's how you could have talked about this. Because remember that they're saying, do you agree that it is necessary to impose a tax? All right, that's what we're dealing with here. So I'm not really a fan of how you develop this. This kind of mistake would affect two things. It would affect both your task achievement and your coherence and cohesion. It's one of those errors that really covers two different criteria. So just be aware of that. Okay, let's look at the second body paragraph. Although there is a case for... Okay, here's a problem. Check it out. The grammar here is completely wrong. Although is a linking device which requires two clauses. All right, you only have one. So, and as a sentence, it doesn't seem to fit out. It doesn't seem to fit at all. But let's move on here. Although there is a case for significant people's obesity problems. I don't know what you mean by significant people. That doesn't make sense. Are you saying they're important people? So there's a lot of problems with this sentence. Let's just ignore it for the moment and move on. This is largely because of their terrible eating habits. For instance, an extensive study by Harvard University showed that Americans' obesity rates, not Americans, but American S apostrophe, are mostly caused by cheaper food consumption, which they largely demanded for fast food. Okay, again, grammar is really a problem here. You're not saying what you want to say. There's definitely some inability to express yourself. All right. Okay. Consistent with this line of thinking is that the majority of individuals prefer food that is affordable regardless of their nutrition. Thus, it is possible to state beyond doubt that society would change eating habits if the prices are more accessible. All right. I don't know what you're trying to argue here. I really don't. Let's see. What are you saying? I don't know what you're saying. Are you saying... Let me see if I can read it again. Okay, so let me tell you what I understand from this particular paragraph here. I think that what you're trying to say is that despite the above, there are other measures that could be taken by the government instead of increasing taxes for this kind of food. What the government should focus on is making affordable food more available, or making quality food more affordable for people. And then you could talk about these examples from Harvard University. You could say things like if people are given the choice between affordable food and nutritious food and non-nutritious food, and they're both at the same price, that the majority of people select the nutritious food. So the problem is the cost. Okay, and then you could say that, so this should be the focus of the government and not increasing taxes on these foods. Does that make sense? Because I really didn't understand where you were going with this. All right, let's move on. From the examples and arguments given, the arguments and examples given, I firmly believe that although governments can aid to influence demand through taxes and unhealthy food, again, this is not a full sentence. You can't put a full stop here because you used although. It is predicted that taxes on food will increasingly grow in importance. Okay, fine. I think I've given you really extensive feedback on this essay. I don't want to spend any more time with it because we still have your task 1 to look at. So let's go look at that. The bar chart depicts data about the number of money. No, the amount of money. And it's not the amount of money, it's the number of sales. Careful here, because just because you see these 50,000, 100,000, so forth, that's not how much money they made. Each one of these might cost $20 or €50 or who knows. So it's not the number of money. It's The bar chart depicts data about the number of sales which were made by 2 chip manufacturers in France over a year period in 2017. The Intel chip manufacturer represents the highest number of sales annually. In June, the most popular sales overall were Intel chips, and AMD, not P, had earned nothing during that month. Okay, if this is supposed to be your overview, I would have preferred that you just stop here. That would have been better. Here you start getting into detail, and I don't want to see detail, okay? You said that Intel manufacturer represents the highest number of sales annually. Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. You could have also said that while both companies experience considerable fluctuation throughout the year, on the whole, Intel had higher sales. Okay? Moving on. In the first 6 months, Intel chip sales went up considerably from 50,000 to reaching a peak of 125,000, with the exception of April, which was just around 25,000. On the contrary, not really, in contrast, AMD chips purchased were mostly under 50,000, while February was the highest point of sales at 120,000. This, again, is incorrect. It's not a full sentence. It's just a fragment. It's just half a sentence. So what you could have said is, interestingly, there were no AMD sales during June. That's a full sentence. Regarding the second half of the year, Intel sales rose from 25,000 in June to 75,000 in August before leveling ing off during the next 2 months, after which sales grew drastically in November and December at 110 and 100,000 respectively. All right, that's a nice sentence. Meanwhile, AMD sales were bigger than those of Intel in July, September, and October. During the other months, sales, SALES, dropped significantly below 100,000, particularly in November at just 10,000. Okay, fine. I think I've already given you, again, a lot of feedback on this. There was a lot of grammatical stuff. I like that you split it in half. That was effective. That was a good way to do it. You talked about the first half of the year, and then you talked about the second half of the year. I like that. You kept calling the company the wrong name. It's AMD. You kept calling it AMP. So it's possible that an examiner would be kind of strict with you about this and mark you down for inaccuracy, which would affect your task achievement score. Let's see. What else did I want to tell you about this? Okay, there were also a number of grammatical things happening, so be aware of those. You could see that I made a lot of corrections throughout. Wrong participles, wrong articles, so a lot of things that were happening incorrectly. And you want to be careful that these aren't happening consistently throughout your essay, and that they're not like in every sentence, or not even like in every other sentence. You want to kind of limit them to how many, especially in a task this short. You don't want them in every sentence or every other sentence. Okay, so go ahead now and correct your essays, add to your error correction list, send us back your next set of essay. We're here, we're looking forward to reading them, so good luck.